Robert Plank Show, episode 247. Tame the High Cost of College. Pursue side hustles and entrepreneurial adventures with Brad Baldridge. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the program. Our guest today is Brad Baldridge, and Brad has been a college consultant since 2004 and is the founder of Taming the High Cost of College. Brad is also a certified financial planner who has been helping families integrate their college planning with their retirement goals and investments. So, Mr. Brad, how are things today?
Things are great.
Awesome. So, we read your bio and we have a little bit of idea who you are. So, can you just tell us, like, having said that, what are you all about and what makes you stand out compared to people who are similar to you?
Right. Okay. So I'm a financial planner and been doing that the last 20 years. About 10 years ago, I started focusing on what I call late stage college planning, which is helping families that have high school kids really figure out the college process. Um, so some families may have saved a pot of money, other families maybe haven't saved anything at all. But all families are now in that situation where they're visiting schools, they're trying to figure out financial aid, debating if they should take loans, again, trying to figure out scholarships and merit aid and athletics and all the different pieces in order to make a college reality for their kids.
Cool. And so, since we're talking to a lot of like entrepreneurs and people like that today, so do you think that if someone maybe doesn't want to go through that all of that, like the work study or the student loans, do you think it's possible for some of these, the families and maybe even the kids themselves to maybe start their own online business and pay for some or all of college using that?
Oh, absolutely. I've actually seen a few examples that, not online businesses, but I had a situation where a dad who already was running his own business went out and bought a additional business. And the business he bought was selling sunglasses. And he bought essentially the fixtures and equipment so that they could sell sunglasses at the state fairs and that type of thing. So he had inventory, and they would then set up shop at a state fair. And of course, they work really hard. You're there at 7 a.m. selling sunglasses till midnight or whatever it was. Uh, but by starting that secondary business, the kids were the driving force. When it started, the kids were relatively young, and dad had to be there to help. But by the third, fourth, fifth year, the kids were in college and able to handle it themselves, and dad didn't even show up. And the kids ran the business, and they were able to raise substantial funds in the 25 or 30 days in the summer where they were actually at the state fair or whatever festival that they were plugged into. And in the end, it was dad's entrepreneurial idea. And of course, the kids learned a lot about entrepreneurship and sales and marketing and understanding the value of your time and a value of a buck for that matter.
Right, and there's so many cool things about that scenario and this whole scenario in general that like you said the dad or the grown up, so to speak, can figure out how to get the business started and what the business like should and shouldn't do and kind of get the ball rolling and maybe put in the initial money and figure out how to get all the bugs worked out, and then once that gets rocking and rolling and the kids are kind of old enough and the kids can start to take over. And I think that what's also sort of interesting about this, I guess, this reason of getting into business is that, well, number one, like, it doesn't have to be forever. Like, sometimes we think about starting a business as a thing that has to go 10, 20 years, and I guess it could if we want to, but it doesn't have to. And the other thing that's kind of interesting about this is it sounds like this is sort of like the kids going to college or this big expense sounds like a good reason to kind of get our butts in gear, right? Like, if parents especially out there have been thinking about starting a business or something like that, they can say, well, now that I actually have this real reason to raise this money, now I have an excuse to actually take that action I've always been delaying my whole life.
Absolutely. I've seen a lot of families as part of their college planning, they're saying, to really make this work, we need another 1,000 a month to, really afford the college that we want to for our two or three kids. And we could try and squeeze that out of the budget, but we'd rather not. I think a better solution for us is to find a side hustle and make another 1,000 a month. And in today's day and age, again, I've had parents get involved by, offering their services through the online portals like Upwork, where their day job was as an engineer, and they did some design work on the side in the evenings and weekends, and were able to charge 50 or $100 an hour for what they were doing, and everybody won. Other times, I've seen the kids launch a business that was kind of tangential to mom and dad's business, where mom and dad would say, there's an opportunity here. We don't really have the time or the gumption to pursue it, but now that we've got a high school kid that can do some of the work as well, maybe we'll add that extra service and then have the student get involved and manage that and run that for us.
So
Um,
with all these kind of possibilities that I'm hearing, is there any kind of method to the madness? There's like some kind of like a step by step process, or do you advise people to maybe like take it like an inventory of maybe like their skills or people they get in front of, or like with all these possibilities, how does a family like narrow down what this side hustle to pay for college should be?
yeah, well, and again, you need to look at the mom and dad's talents and abilities and the student, and then and what opportunities you see out there. Again, some of the families I've worked with have had the opportunities because they were already in business themselves, and it was just kind of an extension of what they were already doing. Other times, you might be starting from scratch and saying, all right, we've got to figure out what it is that we can do. But a lot of entrepreneurs out there, they can just either hire the kids in the business and grow the business faster because of that. It doesn't have to be complicated. It's all right. You know, Tell you what, little Johnny, why don't you do a bunch of Facebook advertising, figure out how that works. We've never done it before, but once you figure it out, we should be able to grow our sales. And when we do that, we'll make more money and we'll have more money for college.
And I like sort of right in there when you kind of, I don't know, like we got a little peek into your thought process there where it sounds almost like if the adults have certain strengths, like they do the grown up stuff or get the business license or whatever, and then have the kids do the kids' strengths, and the kids' strengths might be the techie computer stuff or setting up that ad. And so, I mean, are you seeing like something that trips people up before they even get started? Like, you mentioned there that it's really important to simplify things and kind of just take some action quickly. Do you see a lot of people maybe overcomplicating things, or do you see something in general just stopping people from even getting started with this?
Yeah, I don't think this is specific to the college planning side of things. I think that just entrepreneurs in general, you know, have that challenge of getting started and doing something, whether it's right or wrong, and just trying it and seeing if you can make it work, and then pivoting or reassessing and doing something different. As I'm sure some of your guests have talked about in the past, that a lot of entrepreneurs, their successful business was their sixth try, not their first. And if it's going to take you six tries, well, the sooner you get the first five done, the sooner you start making money. Um, and that's the reality for a lot of families, is just getting out there and doing it. Not really much to do with college directly.
Right.
Um,
But
but where
but
I help people is kind of shifting and saying, if you're going to be doing it, how can you make it college friendly or college advantageous? So again, things like having the kids do the work and receiving the paycheck instead of mom and dad. Again, a lot of times mom and dad are in higher tax brackets than the kids. So it makes sense for the kids to get paid well for what they do, and then the kids pay for college instead of mom and dad earning the money and then using the money to pay for college. It all ends up the same place. It all ends up going to the college, but we get some tax benefits for doing it the right way instead of the wrong way.
awesome, and that makes a lot of sense. And right there, like that's awesome. That whole tax advantage of having the kid who's making that lower income to maybe be able to save, to actually keep the money that they earn from that business. And so you mentioned that it's important to have a business that's college friendly, and maybe like we said, maybe it means that it can be like a seasonal thing, like the selling of the sunglasses, or it can be whenever there's a project, like in the Upwork person. So have you seen any kind of, I don't know, like any kind of difficulties families have had, just as far as like, are the college kids sometimes unmotivated, or is there like a time management issue, or are there any kind of difficulties in just like the who does what work, or in figuring out like the time management part?
Yeah, well, certainly all of the above. I mean, that's one of the first assessments is to figure out if your student's a good fit for doing what you want done. Um, my son is 14, and I'm just starting to work with him in my businesses where I have him doing things like laminating. I've got a number of things that I hand out, and I like them to be laminated. And it's very expensive to laminate things, but he can sit and watch his videos and play his games and laminate at the same time. So it's work I pay him well for, but it's not hard work. It's just kind of busy work.
But I
As he
mean,
gets more skills, I'll pay him more and find better work for him.
awesome, exactly, and that's kind of what was going through my head there. That if you start them young, they can just do a little bit at a time, and you put that away in their own savings account. And if you get started, 10 years before, then that'll add up to a lot, and they can kind of ease themselves into it. And so, I mean, with your son, is there any kind of like a timetable you have him on, or is it just a matter of kind of starting him now and see where things go?
Yeah, just start now and see where it goes. Obviously, every student's a little different. He's relatively mature, I think, and willing to do the work, especially when I tell him things like, well, if you want to do that class trip, you're going to pay for half out of the money you're earning from me so that I can save more for your college, right? If he pays for the trip, which we would have paid for anyway, I mean, it's a good trip, it's a good idea. We believe that it's an appropriate thing for him to do. But once we have him earn the money to pay for it, he appreciates the trip more. And that's one less expense on our pile. So now we could put the money away for college as well.
Awesome. So win-win all around, and it sounds like throughout all this you're getting that, like, not only does your son appreciate having earned the money, but it sounds like you're kind of getting him into this like entrepreneurial habit. And that kind of makes me think, well, did you deal with any families where like the kid is just not entrepreneurial? Like, is being an entrepreneur, is it something that like everyone has, or can it be taught, or is it sometimes just not work with the kid sometimes?
Yeah. Well, and yeah, I mean, the entrepreneurial side of my college consulting is a very small piece of what I do. Actually, maybe only 10 or 15% of the people I'm working with are specifically saying, hey, we're going to start businesses or do side hustles or those types of things. Certainly, there's a whole lot of people that realize that they're not cut out for that or they're not interested in that. And they're just going to, maybe they're already earning a good living as a, again, a mid-level manager somewhere. And they don't really have the time to start something on the side and nor the interest. So they just have to maximize what they can do with saving and investing and, again, financial aid and all those pieces, and just say, the entrepreneurial piece of it isn't right for me. I'm going to choose different strategies in order to make this work. But because of your focus on entrepreneurship and on your show, that there's probably a lot of entrepreneurs listening. But it's
Right.
certainly not a requirement when it comes to college planning. Everybody that has kids that are going to college is going to have to figure it out. Whether you use the entrepreneurial piece, the merit aid, need-based aid, loans, saving and investing, there's all kinds of strategies. And I always tell people there's probably 100 strategies out there or more, and 5 or 10 are going to be right for you. The challenge is figuring out which 5 or 10 those are and getting out there and doing them.
Awesome, and so yeah, so and that's kind of why I asked. Like, I wanted to take a little bit of a detour because my thinking is, well, let's say that's some people out there, maybe one case might be that they're already an entrepreneur and they want to involve the kid in the business, and maybe it just doesn't work out for one reason or another, and they might want to go a more standard way, or likewise maybe they have a 9 to 5 and then the kid gets part of the income from a side hustle, or maybe the side hustle doesn't work out and they want to go the more conventional way. And so you mentioned that there are these 100 strategies, but are there like a couple top strategies, or is there a way to kind of narrow those down? Or let's just say, to kind of take a detour here, if the side hustle entrepreneurial way doesn't pan out, then what kind of options are available? And out of all the choices, like what should people do with this whole college planning thing?
Right. I mean, in a nutshell, college planning is a challenge for a lot of families. And the first step is really to get educated. I offer a podcast where we talk about all kinds of college planning topics, everything I've mentioned and more. And it's an opportunity for you to just learn the lingo and the jargon. You can think of planning for college like planning a large family vacation, buying a car, and finding a job for your student all rolled into one. It's not something you're going to sit down and figure out in a couple hours on a Sunday afternoon. It's a process, just like when you plan a vacation. You're like, where should we go? How do we keep all the family members happy? If mom and dad like this, but the kids like that, who wins the argument? All that kind of politics. Um, just like when you buy a car, you can shop around and you can negotiate and you can spend extra time trying to get a better deal. And then, of course, sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. Right? You can all day long you'd say, I'm going to buy a BMW for $10,000, and it's possible. I mean, but for a lot of times it's not worth the time and effort, because by the time you put all that time and effort into it and discover it's not going to happen, maybe you should have just earned the money and paid full price for the BMW.
Right. Makes a lot of
All
sense.
those, all that kind of fits in there and then it's like also looking for a job for the student, in that if your student doesn't want a job, it's really hard for mom and dad to make it happen without the student, wanting it and participating. Same thing with college, right? If the student is kind of ho-hum about college, it's a challenge for mom and dad to just make it happen despite the student. What you really need to have the student on board. And that's, again, part of the process of, and again, many families that talk about college start very young. And, my son has heard he's going to college since, he was able to talk about it. And, he doesn't have any inkling that it's not an option at this point.
Right.
And is that right for everybody? No. But you need to understand what your family wants to do and put a plan in place to do it.
And so, having said that, I mean, is there a right time to kind of take this college thing seriously? Like, I mean, your son's 14 now, but I'm guessing that like the college plans like aren't completely set in stone. And so it's like, is there a right age or a right time to kind of really get the plan into action, or is it possible to be too early? Or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So that brings us to late stage planning versus early stage planning. So it's never too early for early stage planning, right? If you have a 2-year-old, a newborn, you're thinking about having kids, and you want to start lining up the finances, saving and investing, doing whatever you need to do so that college is part of your overall financial plan, by all means, do that. Then we have late stage planning, which again is now you're there. And that typically starts high school, sophomore, junior, senior, maybe freshman. Now, most of the time it's junior year that I see families doing it, but I encourage families, sophomore year is certainly not too early. You would be a little bit ahead of the pack, but being ahead of the pack is not a bad thing in this situation, where, especially if you're entrepreneurial and you're going to be hiring the kids in the business and that kind of thing, well, that you could be hiring your eighth, as I am, an eighth grader or a freshman. Again, we don't have a lot of details about where Zach is going to be going to college. As a matter of fact, we haven't figured out his high school at this point yet. He's in eighth grade. We're looking at a couple different high school options, and we're going to nail that down shortly. But we're working really hard on high school, so college details are not there yet. But we do know it's coming, and we're planning accordingly. So you can also, on the timeline, kind of separate what mom and dad can do, and then what mom and dad and the student together will do. College visits and college selection and choosing a major and high school and testing for college and all that kind of stuff happens, mid high school, sophomore, junior year. And, your high school freshman probably isn't ready. But that doesn't mean you can't be, again, learning how the process is going to work, or hiring your kids in your business, or, getting involved in real estate if that's your thing, or all kinds of different things in preparation for college that's coming down the road.
Awesome, makes perfect sense. So even if it's early, or maybe even if it's too early, you can still kind of lay the groundwork or check out your options, or at the very least just save some of that money, because the more money you have, the more of those options you have. And like you said, kind of that searching for a car comparison, it's like the more money you have saved up over that time, the less you'll have to kind of do, the less work you'll have to do, as far as like, well, maybe we have to discount that college because we can't afford it and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
So you mentioned that you have this podcast, and you mentioned that you have this blog, and so can you tell everyone like where to find that kind of stuff?
Sure. So I have a website, tamingthehighcostofcollege.com. And on that site, there is my podcast. We've got over 100 episodes where I do some solo shows, but I also interview all kinds of experts. I've interviewed ACT test prep experts and how to save and invest experts and athletic recruiting experts and just across the gamut from gap years and study abroad and college fairs and all things college are available on that podcast. So that's a great opportunity. Again, people that are into podcasting, which obviously you're listening to a podcast now, I think that's one of the best ways that you can kind of get up to speed is plug into a podcast or read a book or two or do something where you're saying, all right, I'm going to start to absorb this knowledge a little bit along the way so that when I get there, it's not such a shock to the system of I got to do all this paperwork and figure this all out. And I've only got 4 months to get it done. That's where I see a lot of, panic and concern. So starting early along those lines. Now we also have free resources at our website. Like there's the EFC calculator that will help you figure out whether or not you qualify for need-based aid. We've got the scholarship guide for busy parents where, again, a lot of families talk about scholarships. A lot of families say, well, free money, that sounds great. We're going to do a whole bunch of that. But the reality is a lot of families talk about it, but they never do it. So I encourage families that at any point, if you've got anybody in high school at this point, you really need to spend a little time with that. It's about it's 4 videos. Each one's 10, 12 minutes long. And at the end of that, you'll know enough about scholarships so that you can decide, are we going to work really hard at it and put the time and effort into it? Are we going to write it off and just say it's not for us? Or are we going to do something in between? Because as I said, I see a lot of families that talk about scholarships. And in the end, when it gets to be crunch time and their students are trying to figure out where they want to go to college and getting all their college applications done, plus dealing with their senior year and prom and everything else, it's not like they didn't intend to skip scholarships. It just never quite got done because the families are really busy at that time. And a typical student doesn't know what to do or how to do it. So in the end, they just kind of put it off. And next thing you know, it never happens.
And the time will pass anyway, right? So whether you take the time to plan that college or you end up putting it off and forgetting about it, well, the kid's going to grow up anyway. The kid's going to be of college age anyway, so why not get in front of it and see what your options are. And so you said that tamingthehighcostofcollege.com, the podcast is there and the blog is there, and then that course you mentioned and all that's there as well, right?
Yep, it's all there. There's a resources tab that'll lead you to the various locations. And we're working on putting more things out there. So I'm working on writing a few courses and other things that will also be available. My goal is to, get families the education they need to make things better. I mean, college is really, really expensive. And if you can plan and save 10 or 20% of your overall college costs, it's a big number, and for most families, it makes sense to get it done.
Awesome, and I like that mindset that even if this college costs and it seems like it's only getting more and more expensive, even if you can't pay the whole thing outright, even just to take out 10 or 20% of it over time or leading up to it, just to kind of ease the cost of that. I mean, that sounds super helpful. And so as we're winding down our talk today, with all the people that you consult with and speak with and stuff like that, all these families, are you seeing like a universal mistake that they're making? Is it that that they're missing out on the scholarship thing you mentioned, or is it that they don't plan enough? Or I mean, what do you see is like the universal mistake these families are making when they're planning for college?
Yeah, and I think it really does boil down to not planning soon enough or not planning at all. Because quite honestly, college planning is relatively complex and there are a few experts out there. But, people that have went to college 10 and 20 and 30 years ago didn't do a lot of college planning because it really wasn't that necessary. It wasn't that expensive. But the game has changed. Okay. The way we did it 20 years or 25 years ago, you kind of, in your senior year, you went and visited 1 or 2 colleges, you picked the one you like, and off you went, and you didn't make a big deal out of it. Now it's, you've got the college testing, maybe multiple times you're taking the test, and then considering, 8 or 10 applications for some kids, lots of visits, a lot more complexity. And then the price tag is so much higher that most families aren't going to just, tighten the belt and deal with it. Most families are going to have some form of saving and investing prior to college. doing what they can during college and then cleaning up some loans perhaps after it's all done. So all those moving parts, again, if you do it right versus do it wrong, it can make a huge difference. We've heard the horror stories about kids graduating with mountains of debt. And I don't think that's any family's goal. And if it's not your goal, well, then what are you going to do to make it come out better for your family?
Awesome. I mean, sounds like if people just use a little bit of thinking, a little bit of strategy as you're explaining, then they can get a better life, and a better life for their kid as well. Because I mean, we have different people listening, and people might be entrepreneurs themselves, and the kids aren't getting any younger. They might be thinking, well, I need to get ready for this, or maybe like you said, get the kids involved in the entrepreneurship, or even just it might be just a matter of making these better financial decisions so that when the kid graduates, they don't have this huge mountain of debt, and then they're forced to get a 9 to 5 job and give up on their real dreams. So a lot of important stuff, and I think that maybe a lot of people out there became entrepreneurs or started their business because they want their family to have a better life. They want their kids to have a better life. So why not kind of see that goal through, and why not, whether your kid is, going into college in 2 years or in 5 years or in 10 years, look into some of this college planning stuff. And taming the high cost of college.com is a place that people should go to check out Mr. Brad's podcast and Mr. Brad's workshop, and contact him if you need that and get all that information there. And so any other place people should go, Brad, or is taming the high cost of college.com the place where people should go?
Yep, everything is there. I'm certainly, and if you want to call me directly, there's a phone number there. So yeah, I think that's probably the primary resource. Of course, there's also you could read a book or plug into a podcast, and there are a few other podcasts as well. If you're looking for multiple podcasts, there's the college checklist with Lauren, and a couple others out there, and so there's lots of resources out there. It's just a matter of plugging in and taking advantage of them. And again, because the typical family when you've got high school kids is busy, and it's hard to prioritize what's important.
Right, good point. I mean, it's hard enough just to deal with the day-to-day stuff, let alone this big, huge college expense coming up. And so, really important for people to be informed about this and know what their options are. And so, everyone should go right now to tamingthehighcostofcollege.com to see everything that Brad has in store for you. And thanks so much, Brad, for stopping by the show and sharing with us this really important and maybe sometimes overlooked topic that these entrepreneurs need to be focusing on, which is college planning. So thanks so much.
You're welcome.
Do you run your online business using WordPress? Did you know that the #1 reason why people's WordPress sites get hacked is because of outdated plugins, outdated WordPress, or just flat out not knowing what they have out there? I mean, how many times have you created a test site and just let it sit there? You're leaving yourself at risk. Besides that, you're wasting a ton of time every single time WordPress updates or your plugins update. There's a better way. Check out Website Remote, where you can manage all of your WordPress sites from one simple-to-use dashboard. I'm talking about comparing what's on each site, comparing what versions are out there, and, most importantly, choosing what you want to update when you want to update it with one single click. This is the way that you need to be managing all of your WordPress sites. And we have a special just for you for being a listener of the Lance Tomashiro Show. Head on over to websiteremote.com/LTS. That's websiteremote.com/LTS to get your 99-cent trial started today. You're never going to look at managing your WordPress sites the same way again.